Sometimes, the most powerful connections don't come wrapped in logic. They arrive like storms, uninvited and impossible to ignore. A look, a silence, a strange magnetic force that tells your body what your mind refuses to admit. He's married, and yet, something about the way he looks at you, it shakes you. It lingers. It confuses the part of you that's been trying so hard to stay grounded in reason. You didn't go looking for this. You didn't ask for attention, or intimacy, or anything that could be misunderstood. But still, something passed between you. To a charge, a knowing. Maybe it started in a conversation, maybe in silence, but from that moment on, you could feel it, like you already knew each other, like your energy remembered him, and it makes you question yourself. Why do you feel drawn to someone who's already taken? Why does your soul whisper yes when your conscience screams no? Why do you feel chosen and guilty at the same time? Carl Jung would not have told you to ignore this. He would have said to go deeper, to examine what your unconscious is trying to show you. Because sometimes, what feels forbidden isn't immoral, it's a reflection of an internal conflict, a mirror of what you crave but haven't yet owned within yourself. When a married man wants you, it doesn't always mean what the surface suggests. It's not always about physical desire. It's not always about betrayal. In fact, in many cases, it has nothing to do with love at all. But it always reveals something about him, about you, about the stories you carry, and the ones you've been unconsciously trying to rewrite. Maybe he sees in you the part of himself he lost in marriage. Maybe you mirror back the version of him he was before duty silenced his desires. Or maybe you reflect the wildness he never allowed himself to touch, until now. And on your side, maybe he evokes the stability you never had. Maybe you see him as safe, familiar, someone who'd already chose, and in that choice, you feel relief. Because it means you don't have to ask to be picked. You can just feel wanted, for once, without begging. But beneath all of that, something deeper stirs, a question far more primal. Why do you want someone who ese una bailab? Why does your soul respond to a man who's already claimed? The answer isn't shameful. It's emotional, psychological, rooted in patterns formed long before this moment. It might be your inner child still chasing the attention she didn't receive, or your feminine energy looking for a mirror that reflects her power, and not just her beauty. And sometimes, he's drawn to your energy not because of who you are, but because of how you make him feel about himself. Desired, alive, reawakened. You didn't create his longing, but you became the trigger, the symbol, the fantasy of what freedom feels like. Jung spoke often about projections, how we see in others the parts of ourselves we've buried. That's what this is, a projection. And it feels so real because it's emotionally true, even if it's not logically right. He might be craving the version of himself that feels alive again in your presence, and you might be craving the version of yourself that feels wanted without needing to prove your worth. This is not just about romance, it's about energy. It's about recognition. It's about two souls meeting at a crossroads, not because they're meant to unite, but because they're meant to awaken something in each other. And that's where the pain begins. Because what awakens you also disrupts you. And when it's someone who cannot fully walk beside you, the awakening feels cruel, like the universe gave you a taste of something sacred, only to rip it away. You begin to wonder if this is a test, if this is karma, if this is fate, but maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe this connection wasn't meant to be forever. Maybe it was meant to remind you of something you lost within yourself. Because if you felt something true in his presence, it doesn't mean he's your soulmate. It might mean you're finally ready to feel something deeper, and he was simply the mirror. Let that land. Let it sit with you. Because sometimes, the person who triggers your awakening isn't the one you're supposed to walk with. They're the one who reminds you to wake up. And when you do, the real transformation begins. Not in the relationship, but in you. You begin to notice your energy shifting. You no longer want to be desired by someone who's emotionally unavailable. You want to be seen, chosen, claimed, fully and publicly. You stop fantasizing about what could be and start anchoring into what you actually deserve. This is when your feminine energy begins to rise from within, no longer seeking validation from chaos, but rooted in clarity. You begin to ask different questions. Not does he want me, but do I feel safe here? Not why won't he leave her, but why am I tolerating this confusion? And this shift, it's everything. It changes your frequency. It rewires the signal you send out into the world. Because when a woman stops chasing emotional breadcrumbs, she becomes magnetic in a whole new way. You stop attracting men who desire you in secret, and start calling in men who honor you in public. You stop accepting temporary highs, and start craving sacred stability. You stop craving stolen moments, and start creating a life that doesn't require stealing. And the man who triggered all of this, he may never know the gift he gave you, but you will, because now, you know, it was never really about him. It was about what your energy was ready to learn. If this message resonates, it's not random. Most people don't know what's truly shaping their emotions, their patterns, their energy. That's why deep inner work is powerful. To begin your own transformation, the Jung Method is a quiet but strong starting point. The link is pinned in the first comment. You thought the ache was about him, about not having him, about him not choosing you, but now you're starting to understand. The ache was older than him. It lived inside you long before he appeared. He just awakened it. He just put a face to a feeling that had been buried in you for years. This is the part that most people never see. They think longing is romantic. They think it's about the person, but it's not. It's about what the person activates in you. When someone is emotionally or spiritually unavailable, and you still feel deeply drawn to them, it's almost never about love. It's about the lesson, the reflection, the invitation back to yourself. The man you couldn't have was never the destination. He was the mirror, the symbol, the catalyst. And now that the storm has passed, you're left with the stillness. And in that stillness, something new is being born. A different version of you. One that doesn't chase recognition in unavailable places. One that knows her worth, not because someone else confirms it, but because it vibrates in her bones. It's subtle at first. You no longer feel the need to check if he's online. You stop imagining conversations that never happened. You start coming back into your body. Your breath deepens. Your spine straightens. Your eyes soften. This is your return. The moment when your energy stops leaking into someone else's story and returns home to your own. And it's in this moment that your feminine power becomes undeniable. Because now, you're no longer reacting. You're choosing. You're not waiting. You're becoming. And this is when the true soulmate connection becomes possible. Not the one that shows up as forbidden temptation, but the one that shows up in truth, in clarity, in mutual readiness. You realize that the love you truly desire doesn't come wrapped in confusion. It arrives with presence, with responsibility, with emotional safety, and it doesn't need to hide. It doesn't ask you to settle for pieces. It offers itself in full, but you would have never recognized it. If you hadn't gone through the ache, you would have never been ready to receive real love. If you hadn't first been addicted to the illusion of it. There's something sacred in this pain, because it cracked your armor. It forced you to meet the parts of yourself that still believed. You had to settle for less. And now, you don't. You don't beg. You don't perform. You don't shrink. You radiate. And that's the feminine power most people never talk about. Not the performance of femininity, but the energetic embodiment of it. It's when your no is as sacred as your yes. It's when your boundaries are not walls but filters of energy. It's when you no longer tolerate love that hides, because you've tasted what it feels like to be seen in secret, and you've outgrown it. Now, you crave something else. Something real, something that stays, something that holds, not just your body, but your depth, your chaos, your light, and as your energy changes, so does your reality. You begin to notice who you attract. Men who are clear, men who are grounded, men who don't flirt with you to escape their marriage, but who build something sacred with you from the beginning. Because when a woman heals her pattern of emotional chasing, her frequency no longer calls for half-loves, it calls for wholeness. And here's the deepest truth. You were never wrong for feeling what you felt. You were just meant to transform it, to turn that fire into wisdom, to transmute that ache into sovereignty. This is your alchemy. The moment you stop romanticizing pain and start reclaiming your power. And the beauty of it is this. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You don't need to explain. You just need to live fully. Speak truthfully, and love yourself so completely that you become unavailable for anyone who isn't fully present with you. Because a woman who's emotionally anchored becomes the most powerful force in the room. Not loud, not forceful, just undeniably felt. She doesn't beg to be chosen. She doesn't compete for attention. She doesn't chase a ring. She chooses herself every day, and that choice makes her magnetic. The man who once wanted you in secret may feel the shift, but he won't be able to access you anymore, because you're no longer matching the frequency of being almost loved. Now, you're only available for the kind of love that speaks your name out loud, that holds your hand in daylight, that meets your soul without fear. And if it hasn't arrived yet, you no longer wait in sadness. You prepare in joy. You nourish your space. You deepen your connection with yourself, because now you know the truth, the one that changes everything. When a married man wants you, it's not always a love story. It's often a soul signal, a mirror, a moment of awakening. And once you awaken, you no longer stay asleep in places that keep you hidden. You rise, you become, you evolve, and the love that once felt out of reach begins to find you, not because you chased it, but because you became it. This is what it means to be aligned, to embody your feminine truth, to move from longing to receiving, from confusion to clarity, from being wanted to being cherished. And the next time someone wants you, you'll feel it differently. You'll no longer be pulled by intensity. You'll be drawn to peace. Because peace is where your soul speaks clearly. And now, you're finally listening. And that peace, it doesn't feel boring. It feels like home. Not the kind of home built from survival, where you had to walk on eggshells to keep the peace, but the kind of home where your energy is allowed to rest, to exhale, to soften. You start to notice how different your body feels around real love. Your nervous system no longer stays on alert, reading signs, decoding mixed messages, preparing for abandonment. Instead, it begins to trust, to open, to receive. This is what most women never get to experience, because they're still trapped in dynamics that confuse love with chaos. They think if their heart isn't racing, it's not passion. But real passion doesn't make you anxious. It makes you feel safe enough to be seen, fully, and that man you once felt so much for. The married man who stirred your emotions and made your energy tremble. He becomes a chapter, not the ending, not the purpose, just a chapter, one you're grateful for. Not because of what he offered, but because of what he revealed. He was never yours, but the version of you that emerged through him. She is. And that version of you, the one who rose from confusion, from longing, from silent heartbreak, she is ready to create love, not chase it, ready to be claimed, not hidden, ready to write a new story, one where she is the main character, not just someone in the background of someone else's life. So if you're still holding on, still feeling the echo of that connection, this is your reminder. You're not wrong for having felt deeply. You're just no longer meant to stay there. You're being called forward now, into a love that honors your depth, into a space that welcomes your truth, into a life where your energy no longer whispers, it speaks with clarity and calm power. This is your time.